well you know your teammates. And I'll tell you how this came up. I attended a Fleet Safety Council presentation conference last year, and there was a guy there named Stuart Knight, and you probably heard if you watched the recap of that conference, you probably heard about Stuart Knight. But everybody was really impressed with him. He was a great speaker. He had everybody engaged, and he talked a lot about how to get to know people that instead of just asking about the weather and then talking about your cat and then talking about something else, he said, learn about people, ask questions to move the conversation forward. And he had us doing some things about just talking about appreciating people to how to ask questions, and we had to ask questions of different people, and it was really well done. It was all based on leadership, which is what any of us can learn as far as drivers, right? So anyway, he talked about a lot about how you make people feel. And I want you to think about this as a truck driver, right? You go into a shipper, you go into a receiver, and a lot of times, we're thinking they're the enemy before you even get there. You already think, oh my gosh, this is going to be one of those bad deals, right? But have you ever taken the time to get to know them and and say, uh, how's your day? And it starts by just being pleasant, right? Once you're pleasant, then you can move on to the next step of, hey, how long you worked here? And, so he was talking about some of that kind of stuff. And that applies to your teammates. And, one of the things I found doing interviews here is you never realize how much you know somebody until you start interviewing them. So I want you to think about this. We had Margaret Hogg on the show. She's going to be coming on the show, and Margaret's a photographer. I didn't even know she did photography, and I knew Margaret for 15 years. So I mean, it all depends on how long, how much you know people, and the kind of questions you asked. And so I'm going to give you a couple tips here in a minute on how you can learn to ask questions a little better and learn a little more about your teammates. So stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this. All right, so here's a couple tips that you can do to learn more about people, but actually be more engaging with your teammates and hopefully make it a little easier for you to get through those deliveries or dealing with dispatch, dealing with management, or even dealing with fellow drivers at your fleet. So this is a couple things and this again is information from Stuart Knight, who is a leadership speaker, a very funny guy, and this was from a conference. So this is not me just making up, I'm just relaying what the information is here. So one of the best things that he said to do is, first of all, you got to talk to people. We're all on these phones all the time. Take a moment to learn about people. Be helpful, be pleasant. These are two things that you can do right off the bat. So let's start with the first thing. Aim to speak to one stranger per day. Can you do that? As a truck driver, that shouldn't be too hard. Talk to somebody different every day. And that doesn't have to be a long in-depth conversation. Just talk to one person every day and find out something you can about them. So that's your first thing. Speak to one stranger per day. Try to have powerful interactions. So here's what he said to do is you ask someone a question, and don't just ask them about the weather. Ask them, so how long have you worked here? And then the person gives you an answer. And then based on that answer, you ask your next question. But make sure you're learning something about that question. Don't just talk about you or talk about, the answer they gave you. Try to answer with another question to take the conversation even deeper. So those are a couple things. They're what they call core questions, okay? And then the third one is to be complimentary. Nice is always good, but be complimentary and talk about other people. Don't just talk about yourself. Okay, we all have a habit of wanting to let people know about ourselves, and I do it too. It's very hard to get away from it, but try to be engaged about the other person. And if you're asking questions that's important to them, then that's a great way to do it. So, so the first thing is talk to a stranger a day. 2, have meaningful, powerful conversations by asking a question that is important or something that is not just trivial. And then the third thing is to be complimentary and be positive and try to be invested in the other person and interested in what they're saying. So that's a couple tips. There's 3 tips there that you can start tomorrow, start today, and see if you can improve your relationships with your teammates. And you may get into. I know he had us do this at the seminar, and there was a guy sitting in front of me, and his name was Daniel Cohen. He's with Sell It Steel, and he turned around to talk to me. Well, we had a conversation going for so long that they actually had to call us back to. I learned so much about this person that, and I never would have probably tried to talk to them if we hadn't gone through that exercise. So it was really powerful for us in the room. It'll be really powerful for you in the room.